Alright, hello everybody, my name's Schmidt, and welcome back to the shop. So on this second episode of our Strutt Epicyclic Clock series, we are working on the pillars, the pillar washers, and the pillar bolts to finally actually put this frame together. First we're starting on the smaller pillars, and first I'm going to rough out the OD and then make the spigots on the ends, and then tap the holes for the bolts. Next, I'm doing a trick that you would regularly in woodworking, and that's laying out a couple lines and then pushing in the grooving tool until they're at the desired depth at that line. And that way I can just use the regular turning tool and just machine all the way down to those lines without having to worry about the numbers on the dials. It was a little bit difficult to fabricate these on the small Sherline. I had to flip around the tool post several times to squeeze it in, but I like having the finer control and detail on the Sherline as opposed to the larger lathe. So I've roughed out this proto part, and now I need to finish the other end, the other spigot. So I'm making this little part here that the pillar is able to be affixed to. And you'll notice there's a little bit of wobble on it, and that's because the spigots are actually tapered so that they don't bind in the holes of the plates when they're all mounted in. So that little bit of run out isn't a problem at all. And here I'm using the tool post as actually a backing block to help with rigidity. Because I don't have a steady rest for the Sherline, I'm just using the backside of the tool post as a substitute. Now I can just turn down the spigot lickety-split. This larger diameter brass was the only brass size large enough to contain the larger pillars, and it's actually too large for my carriage to cross underneath. So what I have to do is machine down the OD until I can finally fit my carriage underneath, and then I can properly machine away everything I need to. Put in a center so that this doesn't risk flying off my lathe again. Parts like these are where you can really dial in the lathe and take just hogging chips. These chips I think are 25 thousandths. I think they might be more. I think they might be 30, which is crazy on a freaking micro lathe. Front and back faces of the pillars, I have to undercut them a bit, and that way when everything's mounted together, the plates are going to be sandwiched against the outer rims of the pillars rather than the inner rims, which would cause a lack of rigidity. After making 2 pairs of the pillars, next are the washers, and it's just simple, poking a hole in it, cutting the OD, putting a chamfer on it, parting it off. And same thing on the washers, I am undercutting them a little bit so that they sit on the rims rather than on their centers. To fix the bad finish that the parting blade left, I'm making a little super glue arbor, drilling a hole in it, using a drill as a mandrel, and then just gluing the washer down. Concentricity is not all that important here, I'm just making a flat surface, so the drill bit is more than fine enough. Okay, so these clips here take place, 3 months, 4 months from the previous clips. It's because I moved, and in that time I got a little ER20 collet chuck to easily hold these parts now. Of course, you can see run out again on these, and that's due to the same reason. The spigots are tapered, so of course they're not gonna land perfectly concentric. And last thing I'm doing is coating these in microcrystalline wax so they don't tarnish and they can actually hold up their sheen. Lacquer is fine here too, but I prefer microcrystalline wax because when the wax degrades, you can just reapply it, whereas when lacquer degrades, it flakes off and it looks really ugly. I'm just giving the surfaces of the washers a fine grain and making sure that they're that last little bit of laser flat. Working on a stack of plate glass here. I have both plate glass and a piece of float glass. And to be honest, for the scale of work that I do, which is clockmaking scale and not watchmaking scale, it's perfectly fine to use thick plate glass instead of float glass. I guess it's important to know the difference between plate glass and float glass. Float glass is usually extremely flat. It's made on the surface of usually molten lead, so it's completely flat, whereas plate glass would be rolled out or something like that. But like I said, it doesn't really matter here. Next up are the screws, making them out of simple mild steel. Now I need to cut the screwdriver slots for the screws. And to do that, I'm going to need a slitting saw. Here I'm making a slitting saw arbor. now I'm flipping the part around and cutting a larger thread. And this thread is going to fit one of Sherline's OEM, I guess, Moore's 1 taper shanks. That way I don't have to get a top slide for this Sherline. I have no idea why I used a reamer here. Concentricity is not important at all for this little cap part. The arbor on the main body is what dogs off the slitting saws. I don't know why I did that. Slitting saws actually have a lot of run out on them, but the important part of slitting saws is that they have no up and down wobble, as in they are completely planar, and this one is perfect. Just gonna flatten the tops of these screws just to knock off any burrs and get a nice polish on it. And then I'll also polish the edges of them. I have this metal emery stick with 2 different grits on it so that I can easily keep the side flat. Came out just great. Ignore the one on the right that has a screwdriver slot that is in the wrong position. It'll fly. On the next episode, we're going to blue these screws, and this is where their beauty will really come out and give a lot of much needed color to the clock. Okay, bye.